My brothers and sisters in Christ, today in the Gospel we hear a repetition of our Gospel passage from last Sunday. The vine and the branches, one of the very powerful images of the Gospel of John. Obviously, having just preached on this on Sunday, I'll refrain or avoid repeating what I shared on Sunday. But another image or thought that has also come to me is dating back to February from the winter storm that we had. And of course, during the winter storm, a lot of our plant life around here was truly shocked. A lot of it killed off from the deep freeze. And so, like many, not just dealing with the plants around the cathedral property, but on one of my days off, one of the first ones after the storm, going up to Somerville to check on the various plants and trees and things up there. And so I had the chance to prune back a lot of a couple of the big plants that clearly were going to survive and of themselves, but the branches, the length of them had gotten frozen. So trimmed them all back, trimmed the plant back to the base, cut everything off, and threw those cut off branches onto the fire to burn. Well, they were still, even though they weren't going to make it, having been connected, they were still green enough that they didn't burn well. And so ultimately just left them. The next time we went back, then it was time to try to burn again, and they went up like kindling. They incinerated. They were so dried out. And this, to me, speaks to the reality that Jesus talks about in the sense of remaining in him as he remains in us. As he is the true vine, we are the branches, having life connected, having Christ, in a sense, flowing through our veins as our lifeblood. This image, if you will, of the cut-off branches speaks to the difference. We hear in the vine and the branches image of the dead branches. There's nothing left to do once they're cut off but to throw them out to be burned. And so certainly by the end, the dried out branches I was able to burn up there. And this refers to what happens to us in the life without grace. Without grace, when we remove ourselves from the source of our life vitality, we shrivel up, we die, and there's nothing left. It's just easy kindling, so to speak. When we talk about realities of hell, again, people associate it with this active judgment or punishing of being cast out, but instead it's the consequence of our own rejection of God. When we cut ourselves off from the life of grace, we literally dry, shrivel, and are combustible. As opposed to those branches that were, near life support and ultimately cut back the plant so that it would grow better. But even as bad of shape as those branches are, when they still were connected to the plant, they were still just green enough. They were different. They didn't burn right away. Where I'm going with this is, obviously, when we are in the state of mortal sin, that's a complete rejection, a loss of sanctifying grace. We set ourselves through our own choice apart from God and his sustaining grace. And thus, that is why the unrepentant mortal sinner is ultimately condemned to hell by their own choice, because they have removed themselves from the mercy and the grace of God. Now, we can go to the opposite extreme of the soul, fully alive in the sanctifying grace of God, and that's what we're shooting for. But that in-between state, a reminder that in the times of weakness, the time when life is a struggle, or where even we begin to lose hope, maybe there's a pattern of sin that we just haven't shaken, and it just, seems hopeless. Sanctity seems like a hopeless objective. But a reminder that as long as we're still connected to Christ, that hope is there. His grace still reaches us. Perhaps we're not yet living the fullness of grace of our baptismal promises of our call that we're called to do, and we need to do that. We need to grow in virtue. But for those in between, not all is lost. Keep going back to the sacraments. Keep going back to the mercy of God. His grace is more powerful than we can imagine. And so even when it seems bleak, God is still working on us. Even when our spiritual life is on life support, God's grace is operative in us. There's nothing that we can do that if we do not approach God with openness, that his mercy cannot fix, that cannot heal in us. And so may we remain rooted in him, and may we never remove ourselves from the true source of vitality and salvation in our lives. May God bless you all.